Did I get all your, I think. 1, 2, yep.
Is that gonna start the timer?
Yeah.
Like right
Oh,
now?
yeah.
Should I
Go ahead and get
wait
the rest of
then?
that floor.
Should I wait then?
Restart it.
Oh, sorry, you were ready to go on
No,
a
no, we
before?
weren't close.
Yeah.
What's you say?
We still forgot to put your name on the page.
My name's still not on there. Let's just leave it at this point.
Probably none of us would have known this, but.
Yeah, I guarantee you. I didn't even notice.
I know.
Great.
Yep.
No.
I know.
I wanna get this over with.
Wait, I want to be pure entertainment.
All right, so we're gonna be talking about HR planning. My name is Madison.
Danielle.
Amir. Vince. Tyler.
Okay, so HR planning is a process that identifies current and future HR needs for an organization to achieve its goals. It's a 3-step process, including objectives to gain competitive advantage, comparison of current and future goals, and identifying how to meet these goals. Today, I'm going to be focusing on analyzing the current state of HR, more specifically a look into how organizations are handling employees and employment. Some of the topics that I will review include full-time versus part-time, interns and temp positions, turnover rates, internal promotions and training, and development. Generally, full-time employees are hired to work 40 hours per week with benefit packages of higher quality. Full-time employees are also more subject to internal promotions with advancements. When hiring for full-time employees, HR is often looking for candidates with experience of certain qualifications that meet the job description. For part-time employees that are hired, they work between 20 and 30 hours per week and are generally offered very little in regards to benefits. Part-time employees are less subject to receive promotions within the company because of the higher turnover rate. There is not much expected in terms of experience or qualifications for part-time employees because they're usually given entry-level positions. Overtime is usually paid time and a half. This is paid to full-time employees when they work more than 40 hours per week. Processing overtime should require strict clock-in and clock-out procedure to ensure employees are actually exceeding 40 hours of work. Certain companies will approve overtime when others are just allowed to take it whenever it's offered. Temporary employees could be considered for seasonal work or hiring during busy months at a company. Usually you see this in retail stores during holidays, tax companies during tax season, and landscaping companies during summer months when they're busy. They have to plan accordingly for these times and know when to begin recruitment and when to lay off. Interns are mostly correlated with college students who need experience in their field upon graduation. Interns can either be paid or unpaid, oftentimes lead to full-time positions. Most interns find a position within the company that's in their desired field to ensure they're getting first-hand experience in what they wish to do in their future. This offers first-hand experience knowledge, but also adds value to their resume. Contractors are hired for specialized objectives within a company or to provide more specific advice on a project. Contractors are paid for their experience and knowledge and an area within their expertise. A well-known example would be a landscaping company who's contracted at like an apartment complex to do snow removal and mow the grass. Turnover rate for full-time can drastically affect the amount of work achieved by a company's force. Full-time turnover rate requires immediate posting of a job and filling that spot as quickly as possible. When a full-time employee is fired or resigns from their position, it can create a lot of work for the HR department. Promotion for full-time provides active encouragement for furtherance of a cause. This usually offered within a business for full-time who have been in their designated position for a long period of time or have risen above others at their level in the position. Turnover rate for part-time tends to be higher than full-time employees. Often part-time work is for students who have other aspirations outside of work. Also, businesses or companies begin to struggle. Part-time is the first kind of to go before full-time employees. Promotions within a part-time are possible, but tends to be less likely than for full-time. Part-time usually makes small advancements, like from a entry level to like a shift leader or a shift manager instead of like a higher up position for a full-time. Cause of turnover can be resigning one position for another in a different company, poor performance, and layoff or even layoff due to reasons just known by the company. The HR department holds the responsibility of dealing with these turnovers, including paperwork, performance reviews, resignation letters, and any possible payouts. After all is said and done, HR's responsibilities to take further steps in filling the empty position afterwards. Cause of promotion consists of strong work ethic, length of time with the company, and even being promoted into vacant positions. These effects on HR promotions include paperwork involving pay raises, job descriptions, and depending on scenario, potential interview process. Within an HR department, you are required to track how many full-time employees are necessary to maintain optimal performance within a company or location of a company. Certain locations may require more employees than other locations, depending on how busy or lack thereof. For training and development, it is highly important for a company's success because it involves making sure that all employees are up to date on what their jobs entail. HR is responsible for making sure that all new hires are set up to be trained in their new position and develop strong work ethic. All companies have different methods and courses of requirements for training. For me, I started working at TD a year ago. Upon accepting my position there, I was informed that I had to attend a week-long training class where I was required to go all the way to Mount Laurel to TD University, where I completed a course with other new hires at different branches in the area. Each day we learned about different parts of our job. So in the classroom aspect of the training, we sat with an instructor and other new hires. We learned different models, the traditions of the company. We had to watch an instructor go through a prompt of how to use their systems, and then we got different prompts and we had to sit and do it ourselves and kind of learn how to work the systems ourselves. And then the last part, well, not the last part, but the second to last part I did, I had to do role playing, where I would sit with the instructor or another student and kind of had to act out a scenario or somebody who comes in for bank needs and different accounts that you would offer them based on what they needed. Lastly, for quarterly training, we had what was called LMS, Learning Module System, and we every quarter would get a new kind of dose of all these different modules that we had to go through and complete and were tested on at the end of to make sure that we were staying up to date on our training and anything that was changing regulation-wise.
So I did forecasting. Forecasting is defined that, forecasting determines supply and demand for positions to predict people shortings, or surpluses. Basically, pretty much like the Weather Channel, where it's all completely it's all predictable. You can say you're getting 3 feet of snow. In reality, it bust. It's 3 inches. Pretty much the same thing as forecasting.
20 seconds seems like forever.
There we go. They really do, man. All right, so there's three steps of forecasting. First one is forecast labor demand. The second one, determine labor supply. And then the third is determine labor surplus or shortage. And you're right, they do feel like forever. Okay, so just for example, throughout the entire thing, say you're making opening up a construction company, right? Got this great idea, you got this great name, right? Call it construction. Pretty simple. Construction with C. It's a brilliant idea. No one's gonna steal the name. So then, you go on, get trademarked, everything's going great. Then you find out, a guy named Kevin stole that name. So now, 3 months later, after solid brainstorming, you find out, let's change the construction logo to a K. So it's construction with a K now. It's beautiful, it's brilliant. Now, trend analysis throughout the entire thing. Construction is a trend analysis. Trend analysis is constructing and applying statistical models that predict labor demand for next year, given relatively objective statistics from previous years. So basically, now you say your construction is doing great, right? So the first part, you built 30 houses the first year in 14, 35 in 2015, 40, right? So basically you can see that trend. So the more houses you start building, constructing, now you got to start considering how many more employees do I need to help build more houses. So now with more workers, you're able to construct even more and following the trend. Jeez. Well, yeah, I definitely overdid that one. Long pauses. Okay, anyway, another part to forecasting demand is leading indicators. And leading indicators are objective measures that accurately predict future labor demand. So another thing for leading indicators include average weekly hours worked in manufacturing, maybe new orders for capital goods by manufacturing, or even applications for employment insurance. So let's just say, for instance, now you lose all the work, right? Because the trend's not right, because obviously forecasting is not always predictable. So if the trend was to fall, and now you're back down to like 30 houses, now you gotta start counting people loose. Now you gotta start thinking of a strategy. And that's why I'm saying that forecasting isn't always predictable. Same thing goes for leading indicators. So now you have to devise a plan on who do you need to let go of. And now you have to, gotta put that there. So let's just say Kevin stole all the jobs that he had because he's doing better prices, better reason, with better quotes, which is causing you to now cut supplies, cut demand, cut labor. And that's just showing that forecast, it's really unpredictable. Like you're always being optimistic with forecasts, but reality is it ever really meeting that expectation? Sometimes it's going up. Most of the time, like Toys R Us, it's going straight down. Now, second part, determine labor supply. So just to reiterate, for instance, in determine labor supply, there's a thing called the matrix. The matrix is just a chart listing job categories showing where the incumbents come from. I believe I'm done now. Fahim, take on over.
All right.
Yeah, there's a good map. I just would grab it.
All right, and this is basically a hierarchy of a company of forecasting labor supply. This is, you'll find in any company, your Walmarts, your Targets, or any company you see out there. You have your frontline management, you have your supervisor, your office manager, and also your team leader. And these positions have to be filled in order for your company to function. And you have to fill these with people who are bright, who are outgoing, and who know how to lead a company to succeed. And this all takes place with a resume. You have to go through resumes to get to this point where you hire these type of people. And with resumes, you're going to deal with stuff like bad resumes, like going through ones that are quality, and you have to dequalify these resumes. Like Professor said a couple weeks ago, of how long it takes to dequalify a resume and get the person you're looking for. And this is the types of things you have to go through to get a quality resume to fill these positions. This resume up here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but he has losing his virginity in 2008. It's just random people.
What?
It's just like people put anything on their resume. It's ridiculous. You wouldn't imagine what people just write on their resumes out there.
Surely I didn't.
And finally, after you get to the resume part, you get to the part where you're interviewing the person. You give them a call. Hey, you're qualified for this job. We'd like to interview you, see if your skills match our skills. And this, you go through thousands of people trying to get that position to fill your front loads, and you finally get to that position. And while you have the interview process going, you have to make sure they're on time to get them hired to this position. And that's a big factor. Today, I saw this kid come in 10 minutes late to his interview. And you think he got that job? Probably not. Just little things, key factors, you guys, we need to do. Another one was this kid actually texted my manager and said, hey, I'm going to confirm the interview today, which is awesome. So we're expecting him to come in. But an hour later, he actually texted us, hey, actually, I can't make it, I'm sick. So you think we're going to schedule for another interview? Probably not. And this is things you deal with when you're trying to interview and supply positions. And finally, we get to supplying the position, and you got to deal with big things like turnover, like people discussed earlier. Turnover is a huge factor into when you supply a position, and then now you have to rehire again because people are just aren't cut out for the job you picked for them. This right here is showing you that the turnover rate in America is 25.5%, and it depends on what company you're in. I was in sales for a little bit, and 25% is not even close to what it really is.
Right.
You're probably looking at 60% with the turnover rate constantly, and these are people that can't take a no, like people who aren't have people skills, and a customer tells them no, and they don't know how to handle it, so they quit the next day. The company I was at for 3 weeks. I hated sales. It wasn't for me, but basically they put us in a Sam's Club, and we sold electricity supply to customers walking through. Now you go into a Sam's Club, you're not expecting to do your electricity bill at a Sam's Club. That's what they had us doing, and this is where the turnover kind of like took place, where people were just not really trying to deal with that kind of thing. And this picture here is just showing you like negatives you'll get through the sales company, and like people saying, I gotta think about it. I don't really want to talk about this right now. Just things that people go through in the sales field that, you have. And just another picture of people saying no, like with customers, is people are very hard to convince them to do what you want them to do in any kind of work. Yeah, very eventful, definitely more than 25% of the average. And another job I had with HR was I was doing an interview with this kid, and he came in and he had no dress attire. He had a sweatshirt, no jeans, and Adidas shoes. And he came in with pizza stains all on the shirt, like he just came from the pizza shop. And I'm sitting next to my manager, and I'm just like, hey, why is he even here right now? Like she was like, we have to interview him, but he's obviously not going to get the job. And different things that happen as well is forecasting surplus. This isn't ideal, but it's not the worst situation to be in. You're going to have companies where you hire too many people, and now you got to figure out what to do. You have your hiring freezes, like I said earlier. Also, having people take pay cuts because you're hiring too many people and you're giving out too much money. This is a kind of funny one I found. So the manager's actually going to cut their pay and give himself a bonus for cutting their pay, which is ridiculous. Also, you have early retirement plans you can put in there. People who retire early and that are in senior positions. This package can help get rid of some people in the company and staff more people from that, like I said earlier, that hierarchy. And then also you have your forecasting shortages. So companies sometimes have too little people, and this is probably one of the worst situations you have, where you have to actually go out and hire a temp worker who isn't really qualified or know what they're doing at your job. This is just like not an ideal situation. Then you have employees that have been there and now have to work overtime. And with this, you have people who are even more stressed out with the responsibilities they had before they even start their job, and now they gotta shoulder more responsibility with that. And last but not least, you have with shortages, you want to reduce your turnover retention. So you don't want to have people trying to quit every second like you did before, where you're going to have shortages. So you're going to have to put programs in place, probably like something new, like a relaxation room or ping pong table, just to like get people more comfortable. And pass over to Daniel.
So when you're formulating a plan after you've gotten your forecast, there are steps in creating a successful strategic plan that the plan must follow within line of the organization's goals, missions, and vision. So the life cycle of the plan is, first step is introduction, then growth, then maturity, and then decline. So each step has 4 factors to it. So there's staffing, compensation, training and development, and labor-employee relationships. Okay, jumping a little too fast. Okay, so introduction. For the staffing portion, you must attract best technical and professional talent. For compensation, you must meet or exceed labor market rates to attract needed talent. For training and development, you must define future skill requirements and begin establishing career ladders. And then for labor-employee relationships, you must set basic employee relations philosophies of the organization. Now for growth, you must, for staffing, recruit adequate numbers and mixes of qualifying workers, plan management succession, manage rapid internal labor market movements. For compensation, you must meet external market but consider internal equity effect, establish formal compensation structures. Wow, that's a lot faster than I thought. Training and development, you must mold effective management teams through management development and organization. Development, labor-employment relationships, you must maintain labor peace, employment motivation, and morale. So then for maturity, you must encourage sufficient turnover to maximize layoffs and provide new opening, encourage mobility as reorganizations shift jobs around. For compensation, you must control compensation costs. For training and development, you must maintain flexibility and skills of an aging workforce. For labor and employment, you must control labor costs and maintain labor peace, improving productivity. And then for decline, you must plan and implement workforce reductions and reallocations, downsizing, and outplacements may occur during this stage. Okay. Compensation, employments, you have to tighten the cost control. And for training and development, you must implement training and career consulting services. Okay. All right, so for downsizing, you have 9 options for downsizing. You don't want to scare the surviving employees that you may have if you decide to downsize. So you can do a reduction in force, which is just simply firing people. You can do layoffs, which is offering severance packages for people that you are putting off. And then for attrition, that's just letting people go on their own. So that's the turnover that we were talking about earlier. And then we have, you can take full-time people and turn them into part-time. And then you can do a pay reduction. So you just tell them that they have to make less, and that's when turnover falls into place again. And then you can do a reduction of overtime. And then you can do demotions, which is asking maybe a manager to step down into a supervisor role. You can do a hiring freeze, so you're no longer going to, you're going to take any applications off that you have, and you're going to stop hiring new people. Or you can do early retirement, which is asking people who are close to retire to leave early, and you give them benefits for it. Now, I work in an amusement park, or I used to, I should say, and we had to do cuts often when we had a surplus of people because it's now cold, and when it's cold, you can't really have people in the park. So we would ask all of our full-time people to go to part-time, and then there was never pay reduction or anything like that, but we would have to, I lost my train of thought. So because you had to go to full-time to part-time, most people would just leave because of natural, like they need more money. So then there are, if you need to right size up because you have a shortage of people, you can offer overtime, you can hire temporaries, or you can outsource, or, oh my goodness. Okay, whatever, I'm moving on. Okay. Oh, you can train temporaries, reduce turnover, so you can offer promotions or pay increases, or you can hire externally. Okay. And now that's the same thing going back to Diggerland. So when it comes to the summer, you now need more people because we're open a lot longer. So we'll either hire new people based on putting something out on Indeed, or we'll ask some of our ride operators to step up as supervisors. And why is that blank? It's just blank. What happened? Okay. Sorry. So for another way to strike the balance in an organization, you can talk about affirmative action. So it's a set of procedures designed to eliminate unlawful discrimination in the future. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy issued an executive order mandating government contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and that the employees are treated with employment regarding to their race, creed, color, or national origin. Now, the protected classes that affect affirmative action are race, color, religion, creed, national origin, sex, age, physical or mental disability, veteran status, citizenship. And then one of the best rules that were made to help with affirmative action is something we talked about last week, which is the Rooney Rule. So the NFL required teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching and general manager positions before the position is filled. This rule was put in place because in 2002, two of the few African American coaches were dismissed, even though they had a successful league. There we go.
A further breakdown of this is a gap analysis. A gap analysis is a tool used to assess the current performance of a business function relative to standards or expectations. There's different types of perspectives. There's two mainly that everybody focuses on, the company and the talent perspectives. A company's perspective is a core purpose of gap analysis is to assess a company's HR goals and whether systems and practices in place and are up to par and that the company is actually achieving them. Talent perspectives are the other key perspective in gap analysis. The discrepancy between current talent and skills available in companies' workforce and its needs. Talent perspectives basically go into what each person does individually and how well they perform their tasks. A deeper look into this, whether it is an internal or external thorough gap analysis are important. Many companies usually hire other companies to come in and take a look at this. They examine their HR policies, procedures, and documents. It's to allow another company to take a look at what is going on and make sure everything is truly up to par and take a look at their handbooks. And they usually review everyday activities that you would tend to overlook and not really see because you're living it. The implementations, there are a few options for this. You can make changes yourself in the company, or you can hire out and have another company make the changes for you or advise you how to make the changes. Many companies, to reduce costs, tend to do it themselves, but it doesn't always work as planned. The pros to having another company do it, there's no real personal relationship to any of the employees, so it makes it easier for them to pick weaknesses and strengths and fire somebody, and they're not really overlooking what you see every day because you're dealing with those people. The cons are it's pretty expensive to hire another company to come in, and there's no real personal relation. I worked for a tree company for a while, and while I was there, the boss would show up weekly and usually examine our climber and the foreman. And by the end of the week, somebody was usually getting fired because there was no real discipline or nothing was up to par or the way he wanted it. To break down even farther, there in gap analysis, you have individual analyses, which are usually done based off of your skills as an employee. You can identify the skills a job requires and compare them to the employee's actual skill level, which Fee was talking about with resumes. People usually read them to see whether they're believable or not, or if they actually have those skills. Identifying important skills. So what a company usually does is they ask, what skills will this person bring to the company, and what skills do the employee have that will help better the company for the future. The skills are measured based off of surveys and assessments, which are usually people fill out before they are hired. There's interviews with employees just to see how they are doing before and after hirement of the job. There's feedback from performance reviews, and then there's skill management skill basis tests, acting on data So after training, more than half of the companies train and develop their staff to fill open positions, as we talked about earlier, and then hiring if somebody is fired because they can't handle the position they're in. They look to hire new people and end up putting them through training. Doing construction now, there's been a lot of people that have come and gone because they lied about on their resumes of what their skills actually are and what they can actually do, and that's very noticeable after the first few weeks on the job, and they end up being fired pretty soon. So.
All right, so I'm going to briefly go over the final phase in the HR planning, and that's going to be actually implementing the plan. So this is where you basically get everything that we previously talked about and put it into action. You basically take necessary steps to actually integrate the plan. So this is going to involve developing and integrating strategies to support organizational strategies. These will include restructuring, training and development, recruitment, outsourcing, and even collaboration. All right, so in terms of restructuring strategies, this is where you basically work on the staff, so you can move staff around, you can terminate some staff, you can move them around. You can even regroup tasks to create well-designed jobs. You can even reorganize work units to actually end up being more efficient. Training and development, so this is where you actually train your staff itself. You provide them with the roles necessary to accommodate what they essentially applied for. This is going to provide them with, you can even provide them with opportunities to prepare for new roles within the job so it can promote job growth. So with training and development, I personally work at a Best Buy part-time, and they're very strict about working outside of your work. So if you do trainings from home, or if you talk to your supervisors or anything like that, you will actually be compensated for that. So even if you do 5 minutes of training outside of your work, they will actually pay you $5 worth of work. Sorry, not $5, 5 minutes worth of work. So in terms of recruitment strategies, this is where you essentially recruit new staff with the skills and abilities that your organization does require. This is essentially kind of laying the foundation for the future, because you want to hire people strategically in a way where they can benefit both you, your corporation, for the future. Outsourcing. So this outsourcing is where you resort to using an external source. So it's actually a lot less expensive, and in other countries, people are more willing to work. So this is where if you go on customer service or something like that, and you get outsourced, you end up talking to some guy in a different country. So a lot of people actually do outsource. A lot of companies, to name a few, these are mostly tech companies, but a lot of retail chains like Staples, they actually outsource. Even Ford, which I didn't know, they actually outsource their customer service as well. It's not always a bad thing though. Me personally, I recently had to call customer service with Microsoft, and it was with a guy who said he was from Illinois, but it's pretty obvious he was from India. He actually helped out. I mean, he was obviously very passionate about what he does. I felt satisfied to the point where I actually did a survey that he recommended I do, and I said, I praised his help that he did. And moving on from that, we have collaboration strategies. So this is where you go beyond your organization itself and you reach out to other corporations if they want to lend a hand in terms of collaborating on certain projects that you feel like you need an external source for as well, besides outsourcing. So types of collaboration could include working together to influence the types of courses offered by educational institutions, working together to prepare future leaders by sharing in the development of promising individuals, sharing the costs of training for groups of employees, and allowing employees to visit other organizations to gain the skills and insight necessary for the position that they applied for. After all that, you have to make sure that your plan is actually ensured by the board chair, the executive director, and even the senior managers. You have to make sure they all agree, because you can't do something and not get permission for it. So as long as it flies by them, it's a great way to receive some sort of final confirmation. Communication is also really important as well. You want to essentially know how the plan ties into the organization's overall strategic plan. What changes in management policies, practices, and activities will be made to support the plan itself. And you also need to look into how any changes in HR management will impact the staff, including a time frame if appropriate. Communication continued, how each individual member of the staff can contribute to the plan. Staff can be supported through any other changes, and the organization can change through the future. It all depends on what the feedback is, which will actually bring me to my next slide. Feedback is something that not my next slide, okay, legislation and mandate. Something really important is to ensure that everything that you're putting into play is actually legal. It has to essentially coincide with existing laws, regulations, not only from the law itself, but laws and rules that go from the organization itself. And on top of that, staying organized is something that is important because implementing different kinds of strategies will result in hectic employee changes, multiple different strategies will be put into play. And it's important to stay organized, otherwise other complications will be further complicating the plan itself. And then you have your evaluation. So this is where you can have surveys within the company to say how they actually like the strategy itself. This is where one of the easiest ways to receive some sort of feedback. There's things like benchmarks you can measure over time to determine how successful that plan is in terms of achieving the desired action they wanted to receive. And then lastly, it's feedback. This is where you just want to make sure everyone you're working with is satisfied, making sure they're okay with whatever's going on. If it's something that obviously it's not flying by them, it's something that you can always change. But receiving the feedback is something that you want to make sure everyone's on board with. So in conclusion, overall goal of HR planning is to just have the right amount of staff. I mean, in the end, it's all about making money. Goals and strategies of the company change over time, and planning your human resource planning it's a regular occurrence. You're changing things. Things are constantly changing over time, and things. Okay, so this is going to conclude our presentation. Obviously, you can tell I'm a bit nervous, so I appreciate you guys for listening. As you can tell, a lot of hard work did go into this, and that's going to end it. Thank you.
All right. Good job, everybody.
I'm mad at my phone. I still get to see me on Disney.
Oh, was that what was missing? Your Disney uniform?
Yeah.